So, a very interesting study came out yesterday, but this honestly should surprise no one. One of the things that has been really hitting this country, and the real problem that this country is having, has been austerity. And one of the things that was said multiple times in the referendum was that somehow, again this was never explained, is that somehow it was the EU to blame for all this austerity. It wasn't, it was the government. It was the government who was imposing austerity. So, interestingly, this study came out. So how badly do you think Barnsley has been hit? Well, I'm glad to tell you that we are top of the league, and I'll have to tell you, I haven't had this much excitement since 1997, since Barnsley got into the Premier League. So, here we go. This is from the BBC. So, cities and urban areas across Britain have been hit hardest by cuts to local government funding, a report says. The Centre for Cities said built-up areas lost an average of £386 per head over the past 8 years. It said councils in the north of England were less able to raise money locally than those in the south. Community Secretary James Brokenshire said local authorities would get an extra £1 billion in extra funding over the next year, while authorities that got into severe financial difficulty, such as Northamptonshire County Council, which, by the way, I want to point out, one of the things we've said on this channel multiple times is that there are lots of councils that are teetering on the edge of bankruptcy. And when we went through that article, one of the things that they pointed out was the thing that has been able to save them was access to EU funding. That is now gone. And I want to point out that the first council to fall wasn't a Labour council, it was a Conservative council. So, Northamptonshire County Council had grabbed the attention. Urban areas in the north of England had seen the biggest cuts to council spending over the past 8 years, the report said. However, this is where it gets good. The think tank said Barnsley was the hardest hit area in Britain, with 40% cuts to its day-to-day spending in 2017 to 18 compared to 2009 to 10. Sir Stephen Holton, leader of Barnsley Council, said that the authority had lost £107 million due to funding cuts and had axed 4 out of 10 jobs. So 4 out of 10 jobs at Barnsley Council have gone. He added the cuts had forced the council to make unpopular decisions such as increasing council tax. Mayor of Doncaster, Ross Jones, said that significant funding pressures in relation to adults and children and social care needed to be addressed nationally, not left to local authorities to address through council tax. Urban areas in the north of England saw their spending cut by an average of 20% compared to the 9% for those in the southwest, east and south of England. And of course, this was the polling. So Barnsley at the top, with a cut of around 40%. So 40%, that's huge. Now the next one is where it gets interesting, because the next one is Liverpool, with about 32%. So that's a big drop, a massive drop. So, I really don't want it to happen, I really don't, but I think you could see Barnsley Council becoming the next council to go bankrupt. I really do. Next you have Doncaster with 31%, Wakefield with 30%, Blackburn 27%, Newcastle 27%, Stoke-on-Trent 24%, Gloucestershire 23%, Glasgow 23% and Slough 23%. You know, that could... It would be interesting to see which councils go first. It would almost be a safe bet to put Barnsley in the next council to declare bankruptcy. It's not going to be good, and it's not going to look good for Dan Jarvis, and as far as I know, Dan Jarvis hasn't said anything about this, but we'll see. So, the Centre for Cities said Liverpool saw the largest cuts per person, losing the equivalent of £860 for every resident, although it included neighbouring Knowsley in its analysis. The think tank's analysis looked at primary urban areas which are largely built up. It found that Newcastle upon Tyne, North Tyneside, South Tyneside and Gateshead had seen spending fall by nearly 27%. Stoke-on-Trent, together with Newcastle under Lyme, had seen spending fall by 24%, while Glasgow's fall of 23% of spending included East Dunbarshire, Renfrewshire and East Renfrewshire, I think that's how you say it. Yeah. And this has just left us completely economically weaker, because remember, the scenarios from the government under a no deal say we're going to lose 16% of our GDP. So the city centre's chief, Andrew Carter, said, councils have managed the best they can, but the continued singling out of local government for cuts cannot continue. There is a very real risk that many of our largest councils will, in the near future, become little more than social care providers. The cities most affected are economically weaker and have been less able to absorb the loss of central government funding. The Country Councils Network said that the local authorities, not just cities and urban areas, have been affected by funding cuts, as well as rising demand for services such as adult social care. Its director Simon Edwards said countries have not benefited from higher levels of business rate income, revenue from housing growth, and much higher per person funding for public services. On top of this, we are delivering on our vision for a strong northern powerhouse economy with a wide-ranging support, including a historic £13 billion investment to improve journeys for commuters, motorists, and over £5 billion for devolution and growing deals, he said. You know, what can you say to that? It's sort of a bit, you know, it's depressing news for a Tuesday, but, you know, there you go.